All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here because honestly, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey today. We're going to explore a massive shift in how we make decisions, basically moving away from a rigid, rule bound mindset and stepping into what you could call true spiritual maturity. If you've ever felt totally stuck, looking for a black and white answer in a world that is just full of gray areas, this explainer is exactly for you. We're going to break down some incredible source material that shows us how to navigate really complex choices using principles rather than just frantically flipping through a rulebook. So let's start right here with a really relatable dilemma. What happens when there is no rule? Picture it. You're facing a situation, you genuinely want to do the right thing, but crickets. There is no specific, explicit biblical law that tells you exactly what to do. How do you react? Do you freeze up? Do you panic? Do you just kind of guess? This exact struggle is what really tests our level of spiritual maturity. Our source text points out that facing these kinds of situations where you have to actually reason on Bible principles without a direct law, well, that's exactly where the true condition of our conscience is revealed. You see, when a specific law doesn't exist, people usually swing to one of two extremes. And according to our source material, immature Christians really struggle with this gray area. On one side, if no Bible law exists, you've got people thinking, well, there's no rules, so I can just do whatever I want. They treat the absence of a rule as a free pass, just totally ignoring any underlying principles. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have folks who demand a strict rule when none is actually required. They're so uncomfortable with the responsibility of making a personal decision that they desperately want someone else to just draw a hard line for them. And honestly, both of these reactions entirely miss the mark of spiritual maturity. Section 1. The Corinthian Food Crisis, a first-century dilemma. Okay, to really understand how to move past those two immature mindsets, we need to look at a historical case study. The Christians in the first-century city of Corinth were dealing with a very real, everyday crisis. They basically went to the Apostle Paul and asked him for a direct rule. The issue? Whether they could eat food that had been offered to an idol. Sounds like a situation where you just want a quick yes or no, right? But look at this foundational scripture from 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4. Paul starts by laying down a base truth. Concerning the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world. He's setting the stage here for a much, much deeper lesson on how to handle matters of conscience. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Paul completely surprised them. Rather than playing the dictator, rather than just handing down a rigid, universal law to fix their problem, he gave them something way more valuable. He gave them no simple yes or no. I mean, think about how frustrating that might have been at first for someone who just wanted a strict rule. But Paul was doing this entirely on purpose. He was forcing them to stop looking for a shortcut and to actually start doing the hard work of reasoning for themselves. Section 2. The right to choose. Elevating the conversation. By refusing to just hand them a rule, Paul elevated the entire conversation from simply seeking permission to actually exercising responsibility. He built his inspired logic on a few key points. First, our source notes that Paul acknowledged the conscience. He recognized that we all have an internal moral compass, and it needs to be engaged. Second, he emphasized the right to choose. He wasn't taking away their agency, he was actually validating it. And third, he reasoned on principles that would allow each individual to find personal peace. Paul wanted them to make a decision they could personally live with, confident in their own spiritual reasoning. He was empowering them to think for themselves. Section 3. Not stumbling others. The crucial balance. But having the right to choose isn't the whole story. There's a vital second half to Paul's counsel in 1 Corinthians 8, 7-9, and it brings a totally necessary balance to our personal freedom. True maturity isn't just about your own personal peace. It's about personal peace plus deep empathy for others. Yes, Paul said they had the right to choose, but he also drew a critical boundary. They had to make absolutely sure their choices weren't stumbling anyone else. Think about it. While one person might know an idol is fake and feel totally fine eating the meat, someone else with a different background might be deeply disturbed by it. A mature conscience doesn't just ask, do I have the right to do this? It asks, how is my choice going to affect my brothers and sisters? Section 4. Developing spiritual discernment, the ultimate goal. This delicate balance, exercising your freedom while showing loving restraint, well, it brings us to Paul's ultimate goal for the Corinthians, and for us today, growing up spiritually. The absolute hallmark of a mature Christian is spiritual discernment.
As our source beautifully defines it, this means using your own powers of perception to reason on Bible principles, rather than depending on someone else or just looking for rules to follow blindly. It's about deeply understanding the why behind the what. Once you develop this kind of discernment, you aren't getting tossed around by those immature mindsets we talked about earlier. You don't take selfish liberties, and you don't demand unnecessary rules. Instead, you reason, you empathize, and you choose wisely.
And that brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought to leave you with today. How are you training your conscience today? When you face a gray area, do you panic and start hunting for a rule book? Or do you take a deep breath and start reasoning on principles? Remember, every single time you take the time to weigh a matter, considering both your personal peace before God and the conscience of the people around you, you are strengthening your spiritual discernment. You are growing up spiritually. For more information, please visit jw.org. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon to get the notification for a new video. Thanks.